क्षिरोदिनि वासिनि विष्णुविलासिनि जिष्णुनुते भगवति हेशिति कण्ठकुटुम्बिनि भूरि कुटुम्बिनि भूरि कृते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते सुरवरवर्षिणि दुर्धरदर्शिनि दुर्मुखमर्षिनि हर्षरते त्रिभुवनपोषिणि शङ्करतोषिणि किल्बिषमोषिनि घोषरते धनुजनिरोषिनि दितिश्रुतरोषिनि दुर्मथतोषिनि सिन्धुसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते.
Hi guys, thank you for joining the live stream. Let me know if the audio is coming fine or not. And today we have back with us on our 51st podcast, Professor Christoph Lieselot, also known as Mysterious Sociologist. How are you, Professor?
Zinda hu.
So today I'm late for a very weird reason. The clock I was looking at, that went out of order, but I did not know. So I was working according to that clock. So, and since I'm so late,
मोदी जी का रोग हो गया है. मोदी जी को भी पता नहीं था ये होगा 240 हो जाएगा.
So since I'm so late, I'm not going to look at too many questions right now. If we have time near the end, we'll take some questions, and mainly we'll take the members' questions only. We'll have to give them priority. So today's topic is, Mr. Sociologist called me up to let me know that he watched Hillbilly Elegy, the Ron Howard movie, the director who made movies like Da Vinci Code and countless other insane, awesome movies. Ron Howard, background score done by Hans Zimmer. That movie, Hillbilly Elegy, is based on the current presidential candidate J.D. Vance's book, Hillbilly Elegy. So he has noticed casteism in that story and also in J.D. Vance's life. So why, Christopher Lieselot, why or how is there casteism in America? Was Manusmriti also popular in USA?
No, apart from the jokes that we do crack, the reason we've been going on talking about caste in different contexts is to kind of normalize the conversation that caste is nothing but status. फिर से बोल रहा हूँ, caste is nothing but status. And this kind of statusism will exist in any complex society where there is hereditary access to wealth and power. Okay. This kind of thing, see, the worst part is the West has done this operation on us where they analyzed our society with their lens and समझ नहीं पाए तो caste manusmriti सब बता दिया ये सब. They said it's a religious thing and all that. They got away with it, frankly. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest reason that we have not been able to defend is we haven't been able to do the same things to them.
Yeah.
Okay. Now the time has come for the global South to look at the global North's problems repeatedly, tell them about it. Basically, जो जयशंकर करता है, वो हम लोगों को भी करना पड़ेगा. And more importantly, it is not to defend our problems, but also to kind of talk on the terms that they have described us in. Okay. So this is where this exercise becomes relevant. That caste har jagah tha. And more importantly, this is going to persist. Jitna bhi reservation kar lo, jo bhi kar lo, jitna bhi free market capitalism, communism, jo bhi kar lo. In fact, it actually increases under communism. That's our common strand of thought, I think, for you and me. The main thing remains that as long as there is human society which is complex and stratified along economic lines, there is a tendency towards casteism. तुम जो भी कर लो वो solve नहीं होता है. Completely solve तो नहीं होता है.
So now the obvious commie counter argument that's coming to my mind is that therefore eliminate these systems of that hereditary access to wealth and power. So therefore wealth redistribution, therefore reservation, therefore freebies, so that the hereditariness of this access to wealth and power goes away.
No, the biggest problem with this kind of thought process is, firstly, they do not imagine a stateless society. Okay,
Hmm.
ऐसा नहीं है कि स्टेट को डिस्ट्रॉय कर दो कंप्लीटली, वो नहीं बोलते हैं ये. दे सिंपली से टेक ओवर द मीन्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन, सीज द मीन्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन, राइट. दे टॉक अबाउट मोर ऑफ कि तुम ऑप्रेस्ड हो. पहले तो लोग को समझाएंगे कि यू आर ऑप्रेस्ड. Once you are being told that you are oppressed, then you have to seize the means of production, and that's how you'll get shit done, right?
Yeah.
Now the bigger problem with that is because it is still under a state structure, and there is still state sponsored kind of institutionalization of status, where the state does provide benefits to certain kinds of people based on their political and economic privileges. Therefore, as long as the state exists, there will continue to be some kind of casteism, no matter how you see it. Now, if we see the Soviet Union, if we see Cuba, wahan pe bhi casteism hai. Very much there is a transfer of hereditary wealth. You think the present ruling dispensation in the USSR, the former USSR, Russia, you think these guys came out of nowhere? These guys were very poor. Lenin himself was from a bureaucrat family. Okay, he was a big elitist. Not just Lenin, all the people you see right now powerful in Russia, they come from generational wealth. Okay, they are no different from the kind of Tatas, Birlas we have here, who also enjoyed generational wealth. And if anything, there is nobody to challenge them because of socialism, because socialism ki wajah se they actually were not there was not enough competitive market to destroy their privileges. So in either way, whenever the state does exist, or state does have to exist whether we like it or not, this is not, we are, none of us are anarchists as far as I know. The main problem is, as long as the state structure will exist, some people will go on benefiting. Ye tum jo ideology laga lo, jo bhi ho. Okay, no ideology in the world has been able to destroy this ever properly.
You brought up competitive market, and that is precisely exactly what can reduce this to the lowest possible factor, this hereditary access to power. Only with proper competitive markets, other people can compete who are not from hereditary wealth, can compete and succeed, and therefore reach positions of wealth and power. Of course, who will be able to compete in what way, that's also based upon their hereditary access to wealth and power, because it means quality education, quality health, nutrition, everything. But you get a fighting chance, which you don't get in anything other than a competitive market.
Precisely. And before people say, oh, America mein to bahut sara free market, ekdam free market ka baap hai America, then why is this happening in America? That's where the case of people like J.D. Vance comes into play. That the state in America was not as egalitarian, as free market, as open as you would think it was. और यही हम लोग डिस्कस करने वाले हैं.
But of course, J.D. Vance's success story is also a sign that he was able to beat that casteism without reservation.
Yes. Ironically, if J.D. Vance belonged to Communist Party of India, Marxist, he would never be able to rise.
Yeah, he would complain about his caste lifelong. He would go nowhere. His career would go nowhere.
The Politburo of the CPIM will always be full of Brahmins. They will never take anyone other than Brahmins. Okay, so that's the thing.
If Vance had the same bio and same views, where would he be in the Democratic Party? He would be nowhere.
Precisely, that's the other point, that the so-called progressives, do they have enough social mobility within their party? That is the other point.
Yeah, they have manufactured mobility for Kamala Harris.
Or dekho, like for example, Obama, right? He went to Harvard. How many black people go to Harvard and they have a successful career in politics and law and all that?
Community organizer from Chicago.
So this kind of, the main thing is that if we talk about what happened in the US, right? Now, I am not a huge expert of the US. I cannot give you a lot of details, but I will tell you this, that there are certainly status differences in the US that become very evident when you watch this movie. I would suggest you guys
Hmm.
watch this movie, because
Hmm.
yahan pe there are a few scenes that will make it very evident how
Hmm.
casteism works in America. And then we
Hmm.
will, talk
Yeah.
about how it, how it is relevant to our continued discussion on
Hmm.
caste, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
for example, JD Vance, I'll just, these are not spoilers per se, because this is not a
Wait.
thriller.
Before you get to discussing the movie and specific aspects of his life, let me just respond to this. See, Kaladin, inheritance is not a problem. Inheritance is what it is. Okay, it is what it is. Inheritance is inevitable, because if you try to eliminate inheritance, you are basically disincentivizing people from living or doing gaining any amount of success with the motivation that they will give their kids a better shot at life, right? So do you want everyone to be discouraged from their kids? See, if it is out of their own accord, that the person who funded the university, or on whose name it's called, the Carnegie Mellon Institute,
Yeah.
so something Carnegie, he
Hmm.
donated his entire wealth to some charity, didn't give anything to his descendants. So if some people want to do it like that out of their own wishes, that is fine. But you can't tell an entire society that no, you are not allowed to leave anything for your kids. It will be redistributed to people who did not have a better shot to society, and then you incentivize again all sorts of communist second order, third order, let's say, effects. So that's never going to work. So there's absolutely no point looking at inheritance as the enemy. How do we bypass inheritance while leaving it as it is? That is our goal, which is what many of my viewers, all the commies, the non-commie, even Brahmins who visited my channel in the last few weeks, who watched my casteism analysis of Tollywood, either they have not watched the video, or it has not gotten through their thick skulls, that where am I ever criticizing these artists or musicians for being from upper caste? I am going on saying in the entire video that, see, this is inevitable. See, it's not his fault. See, even he doesn't know what he's doing. Pierre Bourdieu himself is saying that this operates below rational ideology. So no one is doing it consciously. No one is actively discriminating against Shudra artists in Tollywood. It is what it is. तो इसको हम एनालाइज करेंगे, ऑब्जर्व करेंगे, उसके बारे में बात करेंगे, मगर इसका सोल्यूशन रिजर्वेशन नहीं है, मैं खुद बोल रहा हूं. इसका सोल्यूशन डीआई नहीं है, मैं खुद बोल रहा हूं. बिकॉज टू थिंग्स विल हैपन. ए, bad lower caste composers will get into the scene. Maybe some good lower caste composers will get into the scene, composers or actors, actresses, anything. But also you will be punishing the already great upper caste composers, actors, directors, etc. Do you think in any fucking world I don't want Indradeep Dasgupta to not do background scores? It is impossible. Even if he was the one who did not send Sardar Udham to the Oscars because it provoked hatred against the British or some crap, but he is the best background scorer, I think, ever since Satyajit Ray in Tollywood. So I don't want people like them to get punished. So no hate against upper caste people. But I will of course point out that you are enjoying a very significant little privilege, which may or may not be earned. But also, since most of you are commies in Tollywood, see how it feels like to enjoy
Yeah.
status or respect without really earning it. Without really earning it, you have not gone through the same things, same exact things that a lower caste person in the art and culture field has gone through. So that's all.
No, I think it's very substantial that you brought up Bollywood here, and I'll
Hmm.
just address it for 5 minutes myself. I think it's a wonderful example.
Hmm.
So Ranveer Singh, right? Ranveer Kapoor, right? Ranveer
Hmm.
Kapoor is a brilliant actor. There is no doubt. I think even people who don't like him will
Hmm.
say that he's a great actor, right? I'm personally a big fan of Abhishek Bachchan,
Hmm.
right? Abhi, the box office is the great equalizer. That's what we're saying. If there is a free market, a Kantara, an RRR, and or a Kashmir Files or a Kerala Story, they can do well
Hmm.
if you allow the product to reach the audience, if you allow others to make movies. Ye, like I'm not like Kashmir Files and these Kerala story. They faced other problems. We're not going into that right now. What I'm saying is, let's say you make a movie like Kantara. Let's say you make a movie like RRR. Let's say there are many Bahubali, whatever, huh? Or a decent Bengali movie. I can't even remember the last one. Anyway, something like Mohala, let's say, which is a pretty decent movie, right? Now,
Rakto Beej.
once Rock to Beach is okay, yeah, it's a good movie. So let's say you do make a good movie and you don't have a lot of backing, you don't have a lot of, or let's say like Rajamouli, like 5 years ago nobody knew Rajamouli, right? Like 5-6 years ago, right?
Yeah. Outside
Abhi-
South India, no one knew.
now everyone knows him. Now
Hmm.
here's the thing: the box office is the great equalizer, the free market is the great equalizer, and at the same time Suhana Khan is not getting movie offers, right?
Hmm.
That's the main aspect. See, dekho, this is why we're saying inheritance is not the problem. The
Hmm.
problem is access to a market, access
Hmm.
access of your products to the audience, to the consumer, right? And this should be the case in every field. There should be like proper election. Dekho, Lok Sabha, it's always unless it's rigged, which is a different thing altogether. I won't go into that. But let's say if there is free and fair election, even a small party like Aam Aadmi Party can come up out of nowhere, right? It's not always BJP and Congress and all, right? So of course you can argue that there are other aspects, but my main issue is that the main thing we're talking about here is free market. Inheritance is not the problem. The unavailability of a free market of ideas, of products, of thoughts, and all other consumer goods and whatever, that is the main problem. Once you limit that, once the CPIM limits English education in West Bengal, once they don't allow you to watch Hollywood movies or computers in West Bengal, then you are limiting the possibility of access of goods and services and products from foreign lands. And you are not producing stuff that is good enough to compete with those either.
Yeah.
So this is the main problem.
The
Okay.
second order, third order consequences of such monetary tightening is always that whatever the status hierarchy is existent, they will also get immediately more solidified and rigidified.
Precisely. And dekho, in the comments somebody saying yeah, Ramcharan, Allu Arjun, all are nepo kids too. But my point was not whether. So Suhana Khan is also a nepo kid. Ananya Pandey is also a nepo kid. Now the thing is, they are all putting their products in the market for you to see what you are going to do. Lapata ladies ka jo cast hai, none of them are star kids per se, right? But Lapata Ladies is doing quite well on Netflix and whatever. So that's the whole point. It's like, this is not about inheritance. If you put a good product, people will see whether you are Amitabh Bachchan's son or Shah Rukh Khan's daughter or whatever. If you put a bad product, nobody will see it. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So,
that is my go on.
No, that's why Kill, for example, Kill is doing really well right now, right? So point proven. Yeah. So let's. Yeah,
and that is what that is why I have a problem with this budget as well. Which of course I'll know people disagree with me here, or maybe you as well. But you see, the middle class didn't vote for BJP. Those are to all fun arguments, I know. But the middle class, just like Ambani's, don't keep the money to themselves only, right? Like the commune argument against Ambani's is that he should not have shown off his wealth. He instead should have kept that 600 crores in his bank, or should have donated the entire 600 crore to some charity. Although he's doing crores of charity already. So where the fuck should he have put his extra 600 crores that he wanted to spend on his son's wedding?
CPI
he distributed it among artists and technicians and poor laborers. How is that a bad thing? In the same way, the middle class is not the only one who has access to the middle class's salary. Especially for people like me who are not mainstream big shot composers in Tollywood, my 99.99% of my clientele is middle class. People who are not that good at music, but now want to do it, now want to hire me as arrangers for whatever they cover they want to do, cover of any song or original composition. Or people who were good at music but could not, let's say because of circumstances or because of, let's say, courage, did not pursue the music career, but now they do it on their own free time based on the lakhs they earn in the IT sector and stuff. all those people are getting fucked because of this kind of budget, and therefore the Tollywood hierarchy of its statuses and its caste groups, that will go on rigidifying, because that goes on unaffected, because Tollywood mainly runs on black money and stuff, or the super rich. The middle class who hires independent musicians, those independent musicians are fucked along with the middle class.
Precisely. No, I don't disagree with you on the budget regarding these points. Actually, we'll talk about the budget another time.
Yeah, on another
But
podcast.
you and I think we're on the same footing when it comes to this kind of economic ideas. Regarding the social aspects, we might have differences, whatever,
Okay.
or the political aspects, more importantly. Anyway, so let's move on to the actual
Yeah.
topic of the day.
So,
So-
should we show those two videos beforehand, or do you want to bring out some points on examples of casteism that you noticed in Hillbilly Elegy?
I will first describe a few instances. Yeah, like I said, these are
Yeah.
not spoilers per se. These
Yeah.
are not thriller movies. We all know JD Vance is now a very successful person who went to Yale and who has served the country in the military, who has gone to Ohio State and all that, who is now if there is proper voting, I guess he might become the vice president. So now, what are we then trying to say? There is a scene in Hillbilly Elegy. There are a few scenes, but the striking one is when he got a chance to go for an interview with a law firm in Yale. Okay. Now, Yale law firm, the dinner that they're having, his girlfriend is Usha. I forget the actress's name. Jovio.
Frida Pinto.
Yeah, Frida Pinto. Yes. So he calls her up and says that I can't understand what's going on the table, because the table is arranged in a very formal manner. और ये ऐसा आदमी है कि पिज्जा खा लेता है and all that. They are the equivalent of let's say chapris and these kind of people in India, right? So when he sits at a table with the proper table etiquette, he does not know actually what to do. Then his girlfriend actually gives him some pointers. He has to do something with his fingers, and then he understands ki ye sab kya what I need to do to eat this food in front of the people without looking like a joker, right? So then the people start talking. So pehle to he doesn't even know how to eat with them. He feels embarrassed. Second, when he does talk about himself, he starts describing his life, and the moment he does that, people start looking disapprovingly at him. Okay, kuch bolenge nahi, impolite hai. But eventually somebody says, oh, you're redneck, right? And he's like, nobody uses that term. Okay. And that is a very, redneck is like if you call somebody chapri to their face. Okay, hey, tu to chapri hai. Tu to gawar hai. Aise. That kind of thing. So that kind of pisses him off, and he does defend his position, and he says, oh, we are an ancient family in Ohio. Okay. And that looks like this was very interesting for me, that he went to America. America is everyone's new there technically, right? There are no 1,000-year-old elites there.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like Japan, Europe, or India. The aristocracy in Europe is thousands of years old. The aristocracy in India, the upper castes of India, are thousands of years old aristocracy. America mein to ye nahi hai, right? Now, what do they have in America? They have the Mayfair thing in America. So there was
aristocracy of India is thousands of years old, but not the same lineages, right? Because there was after all caste mobility and fake genealogies stuff.
Fake genealogies, I think you have addressed in your channel itself. People used to, but my point is the categories, like the Brahman, Kshatriya, that kind of categories, these are still similar. Or Muslim,
the institutions are thousands of years old.
Ashraf and all that, that's there. Now, my point is that when we talk about the US, there is typically, because the US did not have an ancient history before the white people settled there. I'm not saying that they didn't have a history. They had a history. It's just it was suppressed by the white settlers there, settler colonialism. Now, what happened is for semantics sake, Europe. Nina is saying no, not thousands of years, but
Yeah,
देखो
you'll have
उसमें
to count basically Viking
the
aristocracy and
Roman Empire से लेके Greece fees वो सब,
right.
forget that. You know what I
Yeah,
mean, right? So let's
yeah,
move
yeah.
on. So in America, it was where if you came on the Mayfair, if there were a ton of British families, gentry families who came over on the Mayfair. Now this Mayfair ship was full of like ये तब का Titanic था, imagine in Titanic in the 1600s. Okay, so all the elite classes, they were on that thing. They were all, even if the poor people were there, they were like, we came on the Mayfair, right? और तब क्या हो गया, जैसे दीपंकर गुप्ता ने बोला है, when like the way Dipankar Gupta has asserted that whenever he asks any Dalit or any lower caste that what was your identity, everyone says we were either Brahmin or we are Kshatriya or this or that, right? And we are poor now. So the same logic happens in the US with regards to the Mayfair. When the ship Mayfair came, everyone, like half the people you ask white people, they will say something like, we came on the Mayfair, right? Except maybe immigrants, they can't claim that, but even among them, they will claim to have some kind of noble association with their European ancestors and stuff. So anyway, forgetting that, this caste kind of thing, the if we look at whom it comprised of, this was primarily the coastal elites, people in Boston, New York, people in let's say kind of San Francisco, few of the cities where the elite white people settled, right? But पूरा अमेरिका में ही तो white people है. There are white people in the south, antebellum. There are people in
In the
Texas,
Appalachians.
Appalachians. There are people settled in kind of the borders. There are all kinds of places, right? White people, and these white people did not have the access to education and the kind of land and kind of capitalism that people in Boston, people in New York had, right? So the people in Boston, New York, and these kind of places, these people, they became the elites of the US. They became the WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant elites. These are the people that E. Digby Balzel talks about. Okay. Now, if we go down, if we go to the south from where this guy is, J.D. Vance. Now, these kind of people, they also try. When they go to a party, you will notice he claims an ancient, we were from that family which was which was like 200, 300 years old or whatever. But frankly, this is the same kind of stuff that Dipankar Gupta talks about. That any koi bhi Shudra ko puch lo, koi bhi Dalit ko puch lo, everyone will say that we were actually Kshatriyas, right? Now maybe it has changed because of the reservation logic, but till the reservation logic was there based on backwardness, till then people used to claim to be Kshatriyas and Brahmins and all that.
Yeah,
right?
everyone claims that their lower caste status is only because of some temporary mishap that happened in their recent ancestry.
Yes, precisely. So Baki, everyone's a noble. Now I've done the same exercise on Muslims, among whom reservation is still not based on caste lines like us, right? So all the Muslims you ask, everyone will claim to be an Ashraf. Everyone. जिसको भी मुस्लिम को पूछ लो, हर कोई अरब से है, कोई, like no Muslims were from here according to their own like histories. So this is the same logic. Now what happened is that this J.D. Vance, when he goes and they call him basically American Chapri, American वो क्या movie था where Christian Bale goes and killing people, American Psycho. So J.D. Vance is American Chapri. Okay. So anyway, when they call him that, then he gets angry and he tries to claim an ancient some kind of thing. Okay, he even says my mother was a topper in her class. Okay, he says that. Now ye kya hai? He is appealing to that the same logic, or two kinds of logic. One is the habitus logic, ki actually you see my family is not dumb. Okay, we were clever, intelligent people. Okay, and this association is always there with genetics and hereditary. Okay, now whether you like it or not, most people think that they are talented because their ancestors were talented. Okay, and that claim to talent is actually based on your ancestral cultural and habitus, cultural capital and habitus that you have inherited through your genes, right? So he appeals to that. Then he appeals to that thing that they are actually Ohio, maybe Garibo, maybe they are ancient. Okay, so this kind of rhetoric that becomes essentially an aspect of pride for him. Matlab false pride, because everyone basically thinks he's a joke, okay, in that dinner. Now, what I am trying to say is that because of this one incident, you will notice how this subtle casteism plays out in this whole, in the American society. Now, if you guys want to know why he's there in Yale, right? He worked hard, the SATs. Yeah, that's the American dream. You can get ahead if you work really hard, like maybe JD Vance. You can go to Yale, Harvard, whatever, even if you don't have money. Or JD Vance ko bhi teen naukri. He used to work 3 jobs to support himself at Yale, right? So it wasn't all easy. Like imagine somebody like Donald Trump's son. If Barron Trump goes to Harvard, would he have to work 3 jobs? No, he doesn't, right? And I'm not saying Trump is bad or JD Vance is good because one is poor, one is rich. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
saying
everything is not a value comment, value based
yeah,
judgment or
I
comment.
am simply saying that this is what it is, that the white
Hmm.
liberals who go to the US colleges right now and those who talk about all kinds of progressive and liberal things about the whole world, I have seen them comment on Kashmir and India, Indian caste system, or ये है वो है वियतनाम वॉर, अमेरिका चाइना, हर किसी पे उनका कमेंट है. एक कोर्स क्या कर लिया, हर किसी पे. It's a lot like that movie where this guy plays a genius, Matt Damon, Goodwill Hunting.
Yeah.
Goodwill Hunting में एक बंदा था ना who said that, yeah, but you know, your children will work for me. The guy who
Hmm.
did one course on American history and acted smart.
Hmm.
So anyway, but see, even there was a bit of casteism, because he said तुम जितना भी genius बनो, जो भी बनो,
Hmm.
I am a student at this elite university. My children will be elite class people who go to private schools, the best private schools and the best universities. And what will your children do? No matter how big a genius you are, your children will work for them.
Hmm.
Okay, you will clean my shoes. No matter
Hmm.
how big a genius, kitna bhi maths पढ़ लो तुम जो भी हो,
Hmm.
right? So this kind of the American liberal elite, if you look at their family backgrounds, they have all had at least 4 or 5 generations minimum of intergenerational wealth and power. They
Hmm.
are all products of these kind of families who had those big nice American suburban houses where you would have access to all the good healthcare, food, good education, possibly private school education, and even the public schools in the good neighborhoods in suburbs are very good, better quality, right? So that kind of a thing where the suburban white American, when they go to college they become liberals, they forget the kind of the intergenerational wealth and privilege that they themselves embody, right? And that becomes evident in that one conversation that JD Vance has with the Yale people who are trying to recruit. Okay, so that is the main issue that we're talking about. ये क्या casteism है, ये है. Now I
Hmm.
would request you to play that video by
Hmm.
Professor Eisenberg,
Okay.
even more than the JD Vance thing, because
Hmm.
JD Vance ka story you guys will know once you watch the movie or read the book, maybe you'll know.
Hmm.
But this professor, just a 11-minute video,
Hmm.
I would request you all to pay attention to what she's trying to say.
Hmm.
democracynow.org, War, Peace, and the Presidency, Breaking with Convention. I'm Amy Goodman with Nermeen Sheikh.
We're continuing to look at Donald Trump's running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, who first gained fame after he wrote his memoir, Hillbilly Elegy. We're joined by Nancy Eisenberg. She's an American historian and the author of the award-winning book, White Trash, The 400-Year Untold History of Class in America.
She wrote a widely cited review of Hillbilly Elegy for the New York Review of Books in 2018, headlined Left Behind. She's Professor Emeritus of History at Louisiana State University. Welcome to Democracy Now! It's great to have you with us, Nancy Eisenberg. When President Trump named J.D. Vance as the vice presidential nominee, as his pick to be vice president if he wins, can you talk about your response, informed by your response to Hillbilly Elegy?
Yeah, hi. I wasn't completely surprised because I did write a review that I think didn't go along with the general chatting class consensus that Hillbilly Elegy was somehow a revelation or told us the truth about the people who were supporting Trump. I'm more skeptical. I was skeptical from the beginning because memoirs are about self-fashioning. The strongest message in Hillbilly Elegy, which is the one that was echoed.
Would she say the same thing for Ibram Kendi or all the other autoethnographer bullshit people from sociology these days, all the non-white autoethnographers?
Chalo.
Last night at the Republican convention is the self-made man myth. This is the myth that somehow America creates opportunities, and just like Benjamin Franklin, you can fashion yourself and you can rise the ladder to success. And this is very much something that J.D. Vance, I think, believes in. It is a part of his memoir, but much of what his memoir says tells us nothing about real class conditions. I mean, the person you just had on from Politico who talked about the Scotch-Irish tradition, that's a myth. That was a myth that was reinvented in the 1980s by people like Grady Whitney, who were trying to shift the debate to an ethnic identity instead of talking about class. And that is something that Americans have trouble addressing, is class divisions, and the Republicans don't talk about them, and the Democrats don't talk about them. And I think this is kind of the undercurrent of J.D. Vance. And I would say, on top of everything, the reason he was chosen, and what wasn't mentioned so far, is because of his youth. This has been in the news, the media, everyone's been attacking Biden for being too old, and then Trump is too old. So now they pick a 39-year-old young man who projects youthfulness. Why? Because it appeals to the media. That's why he's on the ticket. And that his rise was created by the mainstream media. It was the liberals who embraced him. It was the liberals who were reading Hillbilly Elegy, not Trumpsters.
This part is true, and because at that moment, I guess he was swayed by the liberal attention and maybe wanted to pursue this liberal attention forever and after. That's why he was so harshly critical of Donald Trump, according to me.
Precisely.
And so, Professor Nancy Eisenberg, if you could, explain the argument in your book, White Trash, the 400-year untold history of class in America. First of all, explain the origin of this extraordinary phrase, white trash, and then what the myths are about class and poverty that pervade American political and social life, and why you think that's the case.
Can you pause it for a second?
Well, my book.
Bolo.
Yeah. See, this is the interesting thing. He had to appeal to the white liberals, the so-called liberals. ये तो liberal कोई है नहीं. But anyway, he had to appeal to the progressives, so-called, because he knew that they are the reading class. Why are they the reading class? They went to private schools and universities, and they read it as a novelty. They saw him like वो जैसे zoo में we see
Exotic,
an animal, right?
exotic hillbilly
animal within America. अरे वाह, ये भी है. So they were unaware. So they read him. So, but he had to appeal to their sentiments of being a never Trumper. Okay, he had to publicly say, "I'm a never Trumper," right? Yeah. And he did that. He was clever, so he did it. He knew how to play.
Yeah. Otherwise, Ron Howard would not make a movie on him.
हाँ, वही तो है. And these white people, the liberal elite whites, they would not buy his book. ये भी तो casteism है, that you have to appeal. तुमको वो, you have to appeal to that region's dominant caste. Dominant caste मतलब not numerically dominant, but the politically and economically dominant caste, to become a part of one of them so that they accept you as one of them, or at least they read your book.
And this is way beyond the idea of appealing to them, because appealing is as a marketing sort of a term that, let's say, my books would sell 50 and I appeal to you, therefore maybe 55 sell. This is beyond that, because Jordan Peterson's book was not even listed on the New York Times bestsellers list, even though obviously everyone knows how many books he sells. So he wouldn't even be there to appeal to anyone unless he denounced Trump first and foremost. So Trump comes up in 2016, the movie releases in 2020. So he was in the middle of all those things for which he had to denounce, obviously, even if he did not really want it. I'm assuming he actually denounced Trump or hated Trump back then. Now he has had a change of heart. But even if he did not, he would have to play liberal, just like you today, I guess, in your mainstream professional career. So there is no way Ron Howard, even if he wants to make the movie, gets to make the movie. There's no way Netflix funds it. And even if, let's say, everyone agrees, even if Netflix agrees, Ron Howard agrees that they really want to make this movie on this guy's book who ends up liking Trump, no, people would protest. I mean, burn the American flag in front of Netflix's office, call for its cancellation. Then it would be get defunded in the halfway in the middle of the movie, I think. So
Precisely.
that the movie today exists because he denounced Trump.
Yeah,
And this is also similar to Tollywood's casteism as well.
precisely. Chalo.
It's challenging the big myth about America, which again is the American dream, which is connected to the self-made man, that somehow magically at the time of the revolution, we broke from Great Britain and we eliminated aristocracies, we eliminated class divisions, and somehow we were a unique, free, liberated people. Well, none of that is true. We have, throughout our history, relied heavily on English tradition.
So first she says that's not true. And then the very next sentence goes to throughout our history. Oh, to throughout our history, jana tha, to we could have argued it in many other ways. But also, this idea that it's not the case at all. There, I guess we need to ask, in comparison to whom, which country, which society?
No, there
What do you think
is
we got
there
our
is
law?
a big. This is a loaded term in some ways. See,
Hmm.
what she's actually trying to say, and because of terminology, it's becoming a problem. What she's addressing is caste. Because she used the term aristocracy. We defeated aristocracy. Matlab King George, King Duke of Buckingham is not ruling over us, right?
But she consciously does not mean caste. She consciously goes on the economic idea only.
So this is why you see this is a Marxist basically.
Yeah.
कि problem बताएंगे, solution कुछ अजीब बताएंगे.
Diagnosis गलत होगा.
Diagnosis will be wrong, or diagnosis is almost there, but they won't get it right because of the lack of. And they to see the Marxists, they always kind of hide caste because they know that once they talk about caste, their own movement becomes useless. Because first thing people will do is, bhai tum kaun jaat ho? People will become Ravish Kumar. Okay. So
yeah, because you can denounce your father's property and become the head of CPIM and be the chief minister for 30 years, but you can't denounce the education that you gained. You can't denounce the culture you grew up in inside your home.
Precisely.
So you can't talk about anything other than class if you're a commie.
Precisely.
So let's continue then.
Common law. And not only that, the ideologies of class have been pervasive in America. And I think this is the sad thing that we forget. And the reason that white trash still exists today is because it goes all the way back to the colonial period. It goes back to the Elizabethan period, when the original purpose on the part of the English for colonization was to dump the, quote, waste people. That's where white trash comes from, referring to the expendables, the people who were hurting the economy in Great Britain, dump them into the colonies, and get rid of the rubbish. That's the term that Thomas Jefferson used. He referred to raked from the rubbish. So trash literally means trash. And if you can think of any negative connotation associated with waste, that was part of the rhetoric as well. In our class system, what we also don't understand, this was very much a rural notion, because waste not only means rubbish, it means waste lands. And this is a part of the common law, but this is the idea of unfallow, unplowed, unproductive land. And these are the terminologies that provide the foundation for talking about white trash. And our class system, and this term has evolved over time, they referred to as crackers, squatters. They are people who are trespassers, criminals. Crackers comes from crack brain, which attacks their intellectual abilities. So every negative kind of association that you can attach to a group, that has been applied to people who fall under this rubric. And we also have to distinguish, white trash doesn't include all people who are poor or struggling. There are more refined distinctions. So even to this day, there's a distinction among Americans in more rural areas, and particularly in the South, a distinction between white trash and rednecks. Rednecks are hardworking. Their necks are red because they're burnt from the sun. They were associated with living in the swamps in the South. Hillbilly is a very distinctive term, people from the hills, that in a sense is all linking people to specific regions, specific kinds of land. And this is important when we erase all of this, because we think that Americans are detached from the land. Well, property is still the most important source of wealth. And I think we need to remember that white trash is still with us. We have modern trailer trash.
So, what is exactly her criticism of the book then? That the book is true, but the problem remains.
The book does not represent the actual realities, which her book does. Now, let's not go into the the
So,
nitty-gritties.
didn't you see any actual reality in the movie? You've seen the movie, right? I've not seen the movie.
Dekho, the movie is not supposed to tell you it's not a documentary, right? It's based on one guy's life. Of course, I saw it, but they will decry it because, like I told you, they will try to trash it as much as possible without actually trashing it, right? So
So-
she's saying it's a kind of propaganda piece, but hear me out. But she does not say that America is equal and all that. She says even more things कि और भी बहुत कुछ है जो दिखाना पड़ेगा, like hillbilly, like redneck, like this, that, like what all are the terms, what are the unique parts, aspects of American society.
No, but
that-
did J.D. Vance argue in the book that the problem has now gone away? What was his point?
No,
What
I
was
don't
his-
think he argues that in the book at all, because in his TED talk, he pretty much says that there is a forgotten lower class in America. Okay.
Then what is her criticism?
Criticism ये है कि this is, see, देखो, ये left को criticize करना पड़ेगा. He is Trump's running mate now. They have to criticize. Okay.
Yeah, because she's
Understand.
talking like as if it's an insanely, monstrously wrong book, that whatever he has said is absolutely untrue. That's what I'm getting the impression. But
No.
she's basically agreeing with the book.
It does not do justice to the actual realities. But my argument is it's not supposed to do justice to the actual realities, jo hai, because it's based on one guy's family, right? It's not based on 50,000 families. It's based on one guy's family, right?
Yeah, it's not a sociological research book. It did not come out of Brill.
Precisely. It did not. It wasn't supposed to be. It was supposed to be one guy's unique story. And even there, if you
Lived
see
experience.
lived experience, and the more important aspect is that he is the one of the successful ones, right? So he is saying ki humko kitna, like how unique my own life was because of Mamo and all these aspects, all the good formative influences in my life, because even
I
he
get
at
it.
one time, there was a big possibility that J.D. Vance himself would have gone into drugs and destroyed his life.
Right.
But he did not do that. He worked very hard and he came out. Now, that has the American dream. Okay. ये लोग ये नहीं मानेंगे. See, J.D. Vance, they need to decry him for that reason. If they say J.D. Vance is right, that means there is a possibility that America is not as bad as they think it is, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of destroys their fundamental argument that America.
That is why she's pissed off with J.D. Vance. That why isn't he
Yes.
complaining about his background enough? Why is he successful? And if you were successful, how dare you publicize it instead of struggling or solving that injustice back where you came from?
My thing is, see, I am Indian first, right? We are Indians first. So what do we gain out of this? हम क्या कर सकते हैं?
She's pointing out casteism only unknowingly.
Yes, ये जो class बोल रही है, that is actually caste. Because of these kind of terms, labels. You think a American liberal, okay, studying in Harvard or Yale or जो भी हो, MIT, would actually date or marry a absolute hillbilly. J.D. Vance ko bhi, whom did he date? He dated and married an Indian immigrant. I don't
White
think
liberals would never date them.
WASP family would give their daughter to him. I doubt it.
Yeah. White liberal family from California, where Usha Vance is from, such a family, if they were white, they would never. The woman wouldn't even like J.D. Vance.
So if you go to the caste argument, the caste status thing, there are two interesting things that she points out. This woman Eisenberg. एक है कि there is land. हाँ, अभी go back to Declan Quigley. Declan Quigley says what? Caste का basis है land. हाँ, land and inherited wealth and property and power, right? That is one aspect of it. कि you can't deny that land does play a very important role in American society or any society. So what happens in India, you can compare it with what is happening in the US. The WASP families in the US, they own tremendous amounts of real estate and land in parts, in very prosperous parts like Boston and US, जहाँ पे rent इतना high है कि it could feed a family of 10 people in India for 2 years. Okay.
Yeah.
So my point is that if you look at the kind of access to wealth and power and privilege that the progressives in America have, then you will see a big similarity between the St.
Yeah.
Stephen's crowd and the kind of the Lutyens people or the Tollywood people that you're talking about.
Yeah.
ये land or wealth or power privilege, wealth भी आजकल नहीं है तो चलेगा, because now you have a degree from some place like Jadavpur JNU presidency or some place which is a more progressive liberal university from where you can get more options in life. You get to hobnob with the best kind of academics and elites in your own
Right.
society. It's not just
Yeah.
about wealth. Wealth se start hota hai, but look at what Bourdieu says, that it has a formative influence on your habitus, on your cultural capital that you gain through heredity, right? And that makes that means that those who were living for over 200 years in places like Boston or New York and these kind of places where they have good land and wealth and all that, then you get to go to Harvard or Yale or Princeton or these kind of places. And more importantly, there is a book called The Half Open Door by Sinot. We'll get to that after this video. Let's hear a bit more and
Yeah. And a few days back, Mark Cuban went viral for saying that Mark Zuckerberg got all that funding only because he's from Harvard. If he makes the same exact product with same academic qualifications but not from Ivy League, he would never get any funding for Facebook.
अरे उसने तो वो भी किया था, वो हार्वर्ड कनेक्शन with those twins, Winklevoss twins. देखो,
Yeah.
so such a beautiful thing. Social Network is another film on caste, whether you like it or not, because the Winklevoss twins were Harvard में भी caste है. देखो, they were a part of a final club, okay, and his Mark Zuckerberg's roommate, I keep forgetting that guy's name, right? That guy was from Brazil. He later on sued Mark Zuckerberg. So that guy wanted to get into Phoenix, which is an exclusive club in Harvard University. Okay, Phoenix club में हर कोई किसी को attendance नहीं मिलता है. Okay,
And it has nothing to do with Marx.
it has nothing to do with Marx. It has nothing to do with anything. It has, you know what it has to do with? Whether you are a Boston or New York elite, then you will be able to get into Phoenix club.
And you'll have to answer some of those questions that only the Boston elites are supposed to know.
Yes.
Yeah, Eduardo
And
Saverin.
These Eduardo Saverin. Yes. Thank you. So that club, Zuckerberg did not get into that club, but the Winklevoss twins got in by default. ये मतलब जाति है पूरा. हाँ, जैसे
That
जाति
is
समाज
the
होता था.
biggest, most accurate, exact description of jati if we know it today. It's probably
Yeah.
more jati than jatis here.
Yeah, the girls they date, right? The girls they date will not be the same girls whom I don't know, guy from Texas University maybe dates, right? The girls that the Harvard men date are elites, absolute elites who know the difference between different kinds of caviar, different grades of caviar, right? Or different kinds of white wine. ये JD Vance, he says that I did not even know कितना category का white wine है. हाँ, Chardonnay है, ये है, वो है. He did not even know that. So that is the whole aspect of caste. Now Sinot, in her book Half Open Door, she talks about this caste thing. She actually uses the term caste in her book. Okay, so that's where I am getting these ideas about American casteism. So I would say let's continue this for 2 more minutes, because इसके बाद race में, अच्छा, no, she also has very interesting things to say about race. So I would say let's get in. Yeah.
We have these terms that are still thrown around, but just changing the language isn't going to get rid of the class divisions. And that's where I think liberals are really at fault. You can't just rewrite the language, which historians have done. They refer to people moving west as squatters and eliminating the terms that were used at the time, as settlers instead of squatters and crackers. So we have to kind of face the fact that class divisions are real, and that there are distinctions. We can't just think of the urban poor as exactly the same as the rural poor.
Well, Professor Eisenberg, if you could speak, I mean, there is the question of white trash, that is to say, not only in economic terms, poor white people, but also Black and Latinx people, the vast, I mean, in terms of percentages of populations, by race and ethnicity, in 2022, 17% of Black people in the US were living below the poverty line compared to 8.6% of white people. So there is a massive intersection of race and poverty. If you could talk about that and how this figures in the whole conversation about class in the US.
Yeah, I think, but that statistic distorts things because the population size of people who are classified as white is much larger. So there's widespread white poverty, and poverty shifts. I mean, depending on what region, what area of the country you're in. And there is Black rural poverty as there is white rural poverty. But I think one of the problems we have with this whole discussion, and I think other scholars have noticed this, often educated liberal elites have seen poverty as simply a Black issue. Well, it's not. And I think that we have to, and this comes from the 60s, from the idea of reducing everything to the urban context, that we have to sort of recognize that if we go back in time, one of the things that's quite striking is that the relationship between poor whites and poor Blacks was much closer than between poor whites and the aristocratic white elite who looked down on poor whites. Poor whites and poor Blacks often lived next to each other. They engaged in trade relations with each other.
So she's admitting that the economic status does not matter.
कैसे कास्ट और रेस का डिफरेंस दिखा दिया विनोद.
What the hell? She explains
देखो.
caste.
ये बात देखो, interesting. She kind of downplays race. Okay, number one. Number two, she says that aristocratic whites would not be caught dead with a white trash, right? तो देखो, यही मैं बोल रहा था कि why ये और ये Oliver Cromwell Cox and this one Ambedkar also saying, जो Yengre and all are discrediting, कि trying to discredit, उनका दिमाग नहीं है वो discredit करने का, but whatever. वो the main aspect is that you cannot compare caste with race, number one. और कास्ट यहाँ पे भी है, अमेरिका में बहुत ज्यादा है, because that's what she's saying, the aristocratic whites, she uses the term aristocrat, right? अभी aristocrat बोल रहा हो तो कास्ट बोल ही दो, मतलब ये.
She says all this, but still goes on using the word class instead of anything else.
यही है. You have to now see, I would say I would still like her response much more than what people going on talking about race do. They absolutely deny the aristocratic aspects of the other. They don't deny it, but they will kind of put it on a back burner, let's say, right? उनका रेस मेन है, अमेरिका में सब है रेस, हाँ, और इंडिया में सब है कास्ट, हाँ. अरे इंडिया के बाहर भी तो कास्ट है. You have to acknowledge it. Eventually, it will come to that. The conversation has to be pushed towards that. So
even though in reality, it's, I mean, both problems are actually misdiagnoses. Because in India, the caste that we know today, which still creates problems, which still has, in order to address which we still have reservations, because of which still people pee in each other's mouths, etc. Those things are remnants of a bygone era of status groups, which got solidified because of modern day insane things from the government, whether by this Indian government or by the British government. On the other hand, so this is not even the real status group as we know it. So caste is just a made up play acting of former status groups. And more importantly, the status groups, the statusism, that casteism that actually remains in the society, maybe even if it's not deliberate, I don't know how long I'm going to go on with this apologia, but I think I'll have to for the next few years at least, that I don't mean that Indrajit Dasgupta is deliberately preventing from some Shudra composer from getting into Tollywood. Okay, so disclaimer. So whatever casteism still remains, whatever discrimination still remains, that is based on some other things, not on hereditary caste, even though it's absolutely analogous with the hereditary caste in Bengal. Every famous Bengali you know is from those top three jatis, Brahman, Boidya and Kayastho. But more importantly, in the USA, or at least USA's story of colonization and let's say all the later racism that happened, those things were not even based on race. They were based on religion. They will never address critical theory of religion. They will look at it only from the critical theory of race. But that racism started with concluding that this man, who just happens to be non-white, actually does not have a religious holy book, which means he has no connection with God, which means he has no spirit. Because if you don't have a holy book, if you don't even speak with God, if you don't try to connect with God, how are you even a person? You are therefore not a human being. You are something subhuman. You are not a complete human being because you don't have a spirit. And therefore 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. This non-white person who seems to not have a spirit and is therefore not completely human, let's do racism against that. So racism was the second order, third order impact of their religious view of Native Americans, not the other way around. But they don't even address critical theory of religion, rarely.
एक चीज आई वुड लाइक टू पॉइंट आउट कि अभी देखो इंडिया में और वहां पे सिमिलरिटी क्या है अमेरिका में. In the US, where you have the more elite liberal progressives who are their equivalent of dominant caste or upper caste, right? All those places are liberal forts. All those places are Democrats now. Okay. और यहाँ पे देखो जो बंगाल, वेस्ट बंगाल पूरा एकदम सोशलिस्ट यूटोपिया. Okay. So see the similarity. Now, why do I point this out? Dekho, like I keep saying, you can have a Mayawati in UP. You can have a Nitish Kumar or Jitan Ram Majhi as CM in Bihar. But you will never have a Shantanu Thakur or a Nishit Pramanik as the CM in West Bengal. Okay.
Not anytime soon.
Or
No matter who comes to
power. Even Anubroto Mondol as the CM in West Bengal. You won't have that. Right? So, dekho, same thing in America. You can have Obama as a senator in a liberal city, right? But you cannot have a JD Vance as a senator in New York. You can't have it. Okay. So, ये तुमको क्या बता रहा है? What am I trying to say through this? That this caste thing is more embedded. The caste ideology is more embedded in socialist places. And my theory is because communism and socialism are essentially feudalism 2.0. Okay, that's why they won't allow the upwardly mobile people to take positions of power in their places of power. Or देखो, to our credit, if some person from a Harvard University says India is the worst, we will say तुम लोगों ने ये हिलबिली वगैरह ये सब के लिए कितना रिजर्वेशन दिया है? हम लोगों ने तो पूरा 50% से ऊपर रिजर्वेशन दे दिया है पूरा. हाँ. So Indian society is much more progressive than you will ever be.
Yeah.
Okay. Today a very lower caste एकदम जिसको महादलित बोलते हैं and all that, these kind of people can dream of going to presidency, Jadavpur, JNU, whatever. Now, उसमें भी है कि the more privileged people among their castes will get more, chances there. But जो भी हो, even from their caste, you can imagine going to a place like St. Stephen's or something. Maybe if you work very hard. But for somebody like JD Vance, tuition fee नहीं भर पा रहा था. He had to join the army, pay off his first loan, and then he had to work 3 jobs to somehow study in Yale. और उसमें भी he was exceptionally talented and hardworking, so he got that one job. उसके community से, ओहायो से कितने लोगों को Yale Law School से डिग्री मिलेगा और उसके बाद जॉब मिलेगा. They imagine the kind of discrepancy that is there in America. Can you have look at all the presidents of US? How many are from non-Ivy League schools? None. So you can have a Narendra Modi here as president, prime minister. You can have a Draupadi Murmu as president, right? These are, none of these people are from St. Stephen's and presidency, JNU, all these places, right? That's the whole point of India being more liberal, essentially. Okay. That's the thing. So let's move on a bit and let's finish it.
And Jai Deepak, JD Vance. JD Vance going to Marines and then going to Yale with that scholarship that he got because of serving in Marine. That is basically the Agnipath scheme, which is apparently going to destroy the Indian army, according to some people.
Yeah.
So,
Agnivir, I think M. Shastri has pointed that out quite well. Yeah.
So yeah, and there are people like Jocko Willink who, in the middle of serving in the Navy SEALs, came back and did his graduation in English literature because he realized that in order to command people, he would need a grasp on language, proper articulation, proper comprehension skills. So for that, so anyway, that has not destroyed the American.
का आत्मा ऊपर से हंस रहा है.
Yeah. So yeah, Agnivir is going to destroy the Indian army.
So we have to sort of recognize that poverty can have similar consequences for these two groups. And I'd also say the whole term poor white trash was also something that Blacks used to describe poor whites. And when I went on my book tour for white trash, many Black Americans, understood the story quite well, where I think for liberal elites, it's much more incomprehensible or surprising to them. So I think we can't kind of reduce or return to one of the political strategies of the South, where elites would try to increase the tensions between Black and white and create a sense of competition. And this goes back to the Confederacy. When they had to appeal to poor whites to make sure that they would join the Confederacy and be cannon fodder, they had to make the argument that if they don't support the Confederacy, that free Blacks are somehow going to be elevated above them. And this is something that is still today, is this idea of inciting competition between two groups. This is what Trump does when he incites competition between immigrants and supposedly, poor whites or middle-class Americans.
बहुत ज़्यादा डेमोक्रेसी हो गया. बहुत है डेमोक्रेसी, बहुत.
Yeah. So she was saying this from Virginia, and coincidentally, Virginia and New York were the main, let's say, brains behind the American Revolution. All the people who were from the Federalist side, anti-Federalist side, were from mainly New York and Virginia only. In fact, the Oval Office inside White House is an exact replica of George Washington's own drawing room in Virginia, in his home.
Yup. And यही तो बात है. See, this is why this conversation of caste needs to be flipped onto the West, who actually invented it. Invented मतलब ये नहीं कि पहले कुछ नहीं था. There was no caste, no nothing ever. We are never going to say that. But that's the whole point of it, that we acknowledge that Indian society had problems, but you people were not very much better than what we were.
And this thing and these things were never born out as problems. They were born as solutions, obviously. Otherwise, why would an entire society agree to it? So everyone was benefiting out of it in some way or the other. When it becomes an inorganic thing, or when it stops being an organic thing and becomes let's say a play acting competition, fancy dress competition, that's when the problems happen.
Precisely.
That I don't know who's in my jati today unless you are from mainly UP, Bihar. You don't know too many people outside your neighborhood. You are working in USA, England maybe, or you are working in some other city, as most people are today, and most people are going to do it further. But you're going to pretend like you have jati solidarity. Go around looking for kahan jati, mera jati kahan hai. Which is the Ankit Shah idea that jati means showing solidarity for your jati people. But how the fuck are you going to find your jati people? If you have them, if you still know some people in your jati, fair enough. India is going to urbanize sooner or later. It's going on urbanizing. And if let's say people like the socialists, the hardcore socialists inside BJP lose power, so it's going to urbanize even faster. तो तुम्हारा जाति कहाँ मिलेगा सॉलिडारिटी दिखाने को भोसरी के? तुमको अपना जाति जो ऑर्गेनिकली आज है, which is your profession, which is your scene, if you're a musician, your music scene or your coding scene, that's going to be your jati. That's the organic जाति वर्णा system. तुम उससे निकल नहीं पाओगे. जाति खेलते रहो तुम बैठ के.
अच्छा, ये जो ऑगस्टस है, ये हमारा चैनल क्या बैन करवाने का माने इसमें क्या? His last question is always dangerous.
Or chat, Augustus is saying Indian elites use minority as a shield against the caste question. American elites use race to shield for aristocracy. By the way, do you know any? Okay, yeah.
मैं वही बोल रहा था, इसका क्या है? Anyway.
So I had a lot of experiences like that during my first couple of years as a law student at Yale.
No, go back.
Despite all outward appearances.
Go back. वो main था. Go back, yeah.
I remember the very first time I went to a nice restaurant, a really nice restaurant. It was for a law firm recruitment dinner. And I remember beforehand, the waitress walked around and asked whether we wanted some wine. So I said, sure, I'll take some white wine. And she immediately said, would you like Sauvignon Blanc or Chardonnay? And I remember thinking, come on, lady, stop with the fancy French words and just give me some white wine. But I used my powers of deduction and recognized that Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc were two separate types of white wine. And so I told her that I would take the Chardonnay because, frankly, that was the easiest one to pronounce for me. So I had a lot of experiences like that during my first couple of years as a law student at Yale. Because despite all outward appearances, I'm a cultural outsider. I didn't come from the elites. I didn't come from the Northeast or from San Francisco.
A cultural outsider, if you will. So I guess this is like Kushal Mehra saying that epistemic decolonization bahut zaruri hai, but also decoloniality is bad. So these people will say that yes, I was a cultural outsider, but casteism only exists in India.
I came from a Southern Ohio steel town, and it's a town that's really struggling in a lot of ways that are indicative of the broader struggles of America's working class. Heroin has moved in, killing a lot of people I know. Family violence, domestic violence, and divorce have torn apart families. And there's a very unique sense of pessimism that's moved in. Think about rising mortality rates in these communities and recognize that for a lot of these folks, the problems that they're seeing are actually causing rising death rates in their own communities. So there's a very real sense of struggle. Now, I had a very front row seat to that struggle. My family has been part of that struggle for a very long time. I come from a family that doesn't have a whole lot of money. The addiction that plagued my community also plagued my family, and even sadly, my own mom. There were a lot of problems that I saw in my own family, problems caused sometimes by lack of money, problems caused sometimes by lack of access to resources and social capital that really
Social capital bhi bol hi diye hai.
Affected my life. If you had looked at my life when I was 14 years old and said, well, what's going to happen to this kid? You would have concluded that I would have struggled with what academics call upward mobility. So upward mobility is an abstract term, but it strikes at something that's very core at the heart of the American dream. It's the sense, and it measures whether kids like me who grew up in poor communities are going to live a better life, whether they're going to have a chance to live a materially better existence, or whether they're going to stay in the circumstances where they came from. And one of the things we've learned, unfortunately, is that upward mobility isn't as high as we'd like it to be in this country. And interestingly, it's very geographically distributed. So take Utah, for instance.
And Thomas Sowell has repeatedly explained why the geographic nature of this problem, worldwide as well as in USA as well, geographic isolation. Communities that have been historically isolated generally have, therefore forever have no access to trade and commerce, and therefore no wealth creation, but also have generally lower IQs, which is why, again, diversity is great for these specific reasons, not for any fucking random thing. That if you don't meet different kinds of people, if you don't go on learning different kinds of ways of interacting with people, knowing different, let's say, cultures of different people, then your brain remains low IQ because no new kinds of neurons are growing inside your brain. Because always, every time you know something or understand something new, your brain becomes a little more intelligent. So if these communities, which are for hundreds of years going on living in the same isolated communities, they will generally be stupider. I don't know if stupider is the correct English grammatically correct.
No, I
English
mean,
word.
the main thing is, dekho, look at where caste mobility was limited and caste mobility is possible. In India, Eastern India, Calcutta, which was the ekdam epicenter of British rule in the country, that has more upper caste elites dominating, compared to a place like Jharkhand, which despite its resources was landlocked and kind of like mostly ignored, right? So this is that geography in thing. Aisa nahi hai ki Jharkhand does not have resources. Jharkhand could have been a mining town and wahan se aur upward mobility ho sakta tha, but West Bengal mein Calcutta and a few Bengal got most of the spoils of the British Raj because of the amount of the kind of capitalism that came here, right? But that also allowed for a congealment of privileges among certain castes. So anyway, because you stopped doing business, because you became commies. That's why you did not let others get benefited in that.
And the economic system in these regions, the Kolkata and surrounding areas, was never really a free market. It was capitalism. It was never free market capitalism.
Precisely.
So without free market, that the hereditary access to wealth and power is not going to go away.
Precisely.
In Utah, a poor kid is actually doing okay, very likely to live their share and their part in the American dream. But if you think of where I'm from, in the South, in Appalachia, in Southern Ohio, it's very unlikely that kids like that will rise. The American dream in those parts of the country is, in a very real sense, just a dream. So why is that happening? So one reason is obviously economic or structural. So you think of these areas, they're
But what if they were given reservation for being from the Appalachians? Would that solve the problem then? In such a situation, I would argue that it was going to be people like J.D. Vance only who would probably succeed, because someone who can work this hard on their academics or
No,
their body and
precisely.
their discipline.
Precisely. No,
Yeah.
it would be the elites of the same problems with reservation always, that it would be the elites of Ohio. Matlab
Yeah.
jo ekdam the people who are his friends who did drugs, who his stepbrothers, for example, they did drugs and they were, you know, not so good in studies and all. They got screwed again. They are
Yeah.
not as good as him. In fact, half his family is not as, like, he's an outsider in his own family as well, I would argue. He's exceptional within his own family.
Yeah. So should he have gotten into Yale through reservation?
ये तो बहुत बड़ा प्रश्न हो गया भैया.
Because then we don't see this J.D. Vance, right? Because that's a J.D.
the
Vance
other
who
aspect.
has, yeah, because that's a low incentivized, that soft bigotry of low expectations. That's going to be a J.D.
Precisely.
Vance who has fed off that low expectations
Have
on him from
discount J.D.
society.
Vance. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a different J.D. Vance altogether, who probably
The
does
whole-
only.
The whole thing is that if there is free market, then people like J.D. Vance will rise. Okay, of course,
Yeah.
there will be hardworking people. It's not always based on your birth identity. You can work hard and improve your situation. We are always going to support that. But having said that, reservation does create another kind of class of people. Yeah, same, it will create a same, or Jobio. See, the other aspect of any, if you read the history of state institutionalization of status, which is absolutely crucial for our understanding.
Which book?
For example,
Which book did you say?
State institutionalization of status, which was found in Samuel Clarke's books, right? We've discussed it before. So Samuel Clarke's books, if you read them, you will understand that any state will have some kind of ये जो incentive system, and that incentive system में बहुत लोग घुस जाते हैं. So if you say that if you are from Chhapra, Bihar, or if you are from Ohio in the US, you will get reservation in Harvard, okay, or you will get reservation in presidency. Good. Now what will happen is, maybe I pay some guy in the office.
You mean hypothetically, right? For those of you who don't know, this reservation actually doesn't exist. He's saying hypothetically.
Yeah. Hypothetically, if there is geography-based education or even caste-based education like it is, right? If we say that this reservation should exist, geography bolo, caste bolo, people can fake it. People have done it before. West Bengal right now has a huge case of many people having fake OBC certificates. Or what Mamata Banerjee did a few days back was give 90% Muslims OBCA certificates. So, or these were all political decisions. So see, it benefits, again, only reservation can only always benefit only a few families, and wo bhi you can get through backdoor. Okay, when it is meritocratic, when it is merit based, you can't fake your exam test. वो इंडिया में तो वो भी होता है, but that is different. But you can't fake IIT JEE, right? You can't do that. You have to do, if there were no reservations in IITs, then whichever caste ka banda got in, you would get in based on your own merit, irrespective of what your last name is. But now what we have is, somebody could buy a OBC certificate, which has been done many times. OBC bolo, SC bolo, many people have done it, and they have actually gone on. I think that even happened for some IAS officer recently, that she claimed to be disabled and reservation वगैरह सब कुछ ले लिया. Recently it was found out that she doesn't have any such problems and all that. And that's what I'm saying. So when reservation is there, there's a possibility of corruption happening within that system. Okay, any kind of reservation. कोई बंदा जाके देखेगा, अच्छा, you have this thing, In Ohio, if you're from Ohio, you get reservation, right? Okay, good, because hillbilly is not a technical term, right? Like black is a technical term, hillbilly is not a technical term. You're technically white. So what they can say is, अच्छा, तो Ohio से, so what a person will maybe उससे कई पैसा वैसा देके रिजर्व वो निकाल लेगा, domicile certificate निकाल लेगा. I don't know, whatever that equivalent is, right, of Ohio. It is possible. America is not corrupt, right? You can't say that. So that's the whole aspect. Why countries like Singapore are doing really well is because it is almost entirely meritocratic, as far as I know. Right. So anyway.
Now, these are the extra factors that can happen when there is corruption in the system. The bigger problem is that even if it is a perfectly well-functioning system, even then it has insane bad second-order, third-order consequences for the society.
Precisely. And it will again create that hereditary elite, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Again,
even if you don't fake your exams, even if you don't get a fake OBC certificate, even then it's going to do those things.
Yeah.
Beset by these terrible economic trends built around industries like coal and steel that make it harder for folks to get ahead. It's certainly one problem. There's also the problem of brain drain, where the really talented people, because they can't find high-skill work at home, end up moving elsewhere. So they don't build a business or nonprofit where they're from. They end up going elsewhere and taking their talents with them. There are failing schools in a lot of these communities, failing to give kids the educational leg up that really makes it possible for kids to have opportunities later in life. These things are all important. I don't mean to discount these structural barriers, but when I look back at my life and at my community, something else was going on. Something else mattered. It's difficult to quantify, but it was no less real. So for starters, there was a very real sense of hopelessness in the community that I grew up in. There was a sense that kids had that their choices didn't matter. No matter what happened, no matter how hard they worked, no matter how hard they tried to get ahead, nothing good would happen. So that's a tough feeling to grow up around. That's a tough mindset to penetrate. And it leads sometimes to very conspiratorial places. So let's just take one political issue that's pretty hot, affirmative action. So depending on your politics, you might think that affirmative action is either a wise or an unwise way to promote diversity in the workplace or the classroom. But if you grow up in an area like this, you see affirmative action as a tool to hold people like you back. That's especially true if you're a member of the white working class. You see it as something that isn't just about good or bad policy. You see it as something that's actively conspiring, where people with political and financial power are working against you. And there are a lot of ways that you see that conspiracy against you, perceived, real, but it's there, and it warps expectations. So if you think about what do you do when you grow up in that world, you can respond in a couple ways. One, you can say, I'm not going to work hard because no matter how hard I work, it's not going to matter. Another thing you might do is say, well, I'm not going to go after the traditional markers of success, like a university education or a prestigious job, because the people who care about those things are unlike me. They're never going to let me in. When I got admitted to Yale, a family member asked me if I had pretended to be a liberal to get it by the admissions committee. Seriously. And it's obviously not the case that there was a liberal box to check on the application, but it speaks to a very real insecurity in these places that you have to pretend to be.
And this box check exists in Indian academic circles and the mainstream entertainment industry. There's no actual liberal tick mark, but they will find out. So if at all you want to come across as a liberal, you'll have to say those things which will make you sound liberal. And as for the Bengal industry, liberal in a very specific way. So unless you are that big, you are too big to cancel, like Babul Supriyo. He goes around being a proud BJP supporter and stuff, still gets to do movies because of his famous acting career and singing career beforehand already. But if you are someone coming up, you are definitely screwed. But also,
so it
yeah, go on.
देखो box नहीं है, सही है, but like the Hillbilly Elegy showed that it is about your mannerisms, your clothes, your the way you talk, the music you listen to, the movies you watched. All of these factors will be giveaways. Your consumption pattern will be giveaways of your status. और यही बात है. How you eat, what you eat, whom you eat with, more importantly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And how you eat. So yes. So being liberal in Kolkata is very important. If you want to make it in any show business, anywhere, any platform where your face is going to be shown. But also, wait, I'll get back to it a little later again.
Somebody you're not to get past these various social barriers. It's a very significant problem. Even if you don't give into that hopelessness, even if you think, let's say, that your choices matter and you want to make the good choices, you want to do better for yourself and for your family, it's sometimes hard to even know what those choices are when you grow up in a community like I did. I didn't know, for example, that you had to go to law school to be a lawyer. I didn't know that elite universities, as research consistently tells us, are cheaper for low-income kids because these universities have bigger endowments, can offer more generous financial aid. I remember I learned this when I got the financial aid letter from Yale for myself, tens of thousands of dollars in need-based aid, which is a term I'd never heard before. But I turned to my aunt when I got that letter and said, I think this just means that for the first time in my life, being poor has paid really well. So,
and this is basically Jati solidarity in a way. You'll have to even perform your Jati solidarity if you want to reap those benefits of being in that Jati, or if you want to make it in an industry which has been, let's say, at the moment occupied by a particular Jati. If you think occupied is too harsh a term, let's say any profession at the moment which happens to have one particular Jati. Okay, so in order to succeed in that profession, you'll have to show your Jati solidarity, which is my way of saying that then therefore you'll have to come across as liberal in Bengal's entertainment industry. And in fact, it's not just about Tollywood. It happens in a very specific way. This forced Jati solidarity happens in the music, let's say, independent music scene of Bengal as well. Okay, I'm an independent musician. Okay, and this has been my social experiment with my YouTube channel. All my songs, you will notice that you may not like the songs because of the genre, and after all, let's say music is subjective, but you'll notice that they are basically, professionally produced songs and instrumentals and background scores. Okay, because I am a professional musician, so why wouldn't I make my own songs of professional quality? But you'll notice all of those songs by my covers and my originals, all of them have an average of 50 to 100 200 views. Okay, and I've been doing this for 3-4 years now. There's one game I don't play, which is the independent music scene's Jati solidarity, and I don't play this by my own volition. I don't want to play it because not that I don't even agree with those those sentiments that you'll have to show off, but also as a fuck you to the scene, which again pretends to be all inclusive and pretends to hate casteism. So the secret to succeeding in the Bengali independent music scene is that from time to time, let's say 3-4 times in the week, you'll have to complain about capitalism and how capitalism is killing the independent music industry. From time to time, you'll have to write something against Narendra Modi or BJP. And if you name them and criticize, then you are going to be a little disrespected, because then you're not being an artist. You are being too direct. You are being too, again, low class in a way. Then you are just a crass political activist. But people want to come across as a good music listener by listening to your music, and they can't do that if you come across as a political spokesperson for or against any political party, right? So you have to be a musician who criticizes the current establishment, but says things like, the times that we are living in, these are very non-inclusive times. These are kind of Hitlerian times, but you cannot name BJP or Narendra Modi. And you'll have to, of course, complain about, let's say, USA from time to time, social media, Spotify, all these things which are part of capitalism. And if possible, you can criticize Trump even. And you'll have to have one woman walking around roads or trees wearing a sari. These are the criteria of showing your Jati solidarity. And not the last point is not solidarity, of course, but the first points are that, yes, you too feel the pain of the rest of your Jati in the same ways that they do, which is that capitalism is making succeeding in the independent scene very hard for you. So you have to complain about that and cry about it. Otherwise, no one's going to listen to your song. And I know people in the industry.
Itna highways chahiye.
Yeah. So I know so many people. I have so many friends in the scene, all of whom post these statuses, all of whom talk about supporting the independent music industry, independent Bangla ganer pashe daran, etc. So and all of them think that we must support each other's work even if we don't like it. We must go around sharing it because we are from the independent music industry, because the mainstream industry is killing our edgy, cool underground genres. Okay, but I go on not playing that game, and I go on seeing that none of them ever listen to my music or share it, which I really like, because it proves me right in a more evil way.
I didn't have access to that information because the social networks around me didn't have access to that information. I learned from my community how to shoot a gun, how to shoot it well. I learned how to make a damn good biscuit recipe. The trick, by the way, is frozen butter, not warm butter. But I didn't learn how to get ahead. I didn't learn how to make the good decisions about education and opportunity that you need to make to actually have a chance in this 21st century knowledge economy. Economists call the value that we gain from our informal networks, from our friends and colleagues and family, social capital. The social capital that I had wasn't built for 21st century America, and it showed. There's something else that's really important that's going on that our community doesn't like to talk about, but it's very real. Working class kids are much more likely to face what's called adverse childhood experiences, which is just a fancy word for childhood trauma. Getting hit or yelled at, put down by a parent repeatedly, watching someone hit or beat your parent, watching someone do drugs or abuse alcohol. These are all instances of childhood trauma, and they're pretty commonplace in my family. Importantly, they're not just commonplace in my family right now, they're also multi-generational. So my grandparents, the very first time that they had kids, they expected that they were going to raise them in a way that was uniquely good. They were middle class, they were able to earn a good wage in a steel mill. But what ended up happening is that they exposed their kids to a lot of the childhood trauma that had gone back many generations. My mom was 12 when she saw my grandma set my grandfather on fire. His crime was that he came home drunk after she told him, if you come home drunk, I'm going to kill you. She tried to do it. Think about the way that that affects a child's mind. And we think of these things as especially rare. But a study by the Wisconsin Children's Trust Fund found that 40% of low-income kids face multiple instances of childhood trauma, compared to only 29% for upper-income kids. And think about what that really means. If you're a low-income kid, almost half of you face multiple instances of childhood trauma. This is not an isolated problem. This is a very significant issue. We know what happens to the kids who experience that life. They're more likely to do drugs, more likely to go to jail, more likely to drop out of high school. And most importantly, they're more likely to do to their children what their parents did to them. This trauma, this chaos in the home is our culture's very worst gift to our children, and it's a gift that keeps on giving. So you combine all that, the hopelessness, the despair, the cynicism about the future, the childhood trauma, the low social capital, and you begin to understand why me, at the age of 14, was ready to become just another statistic, another kid who failed to beat the odds. But something unexpected happened. I did beat the odds. Things turned up for me. I graduated from high school, from college, I went to law school, and I have a pretty good job now. So what happened? Well, one thing that happened is that my grandparents, the same grandparents of setting someone on fire fame, they really shaped up by the time I came around. They provided me a stable home, stable family. They made sure that when my parents weren't able to do the things that kids need, they stepped in and filled that role. My grandma especially did two things that really mattered. One, she provided that peaceful home that allowed me to focus on homework and the things that kids should be focused on. But she was also this incredibly perceptive woman, despite not even having a middle school education. She recognized the message that my community had for me, that my choices didn't matter, that the deck was stacked against me. She once told me, JD, never be like those losers who think the deck is stacked against them. You can do anything you want to. And yet she recognized that life wasn't fair. It's hard to strike that balance, to tell a kid that life isn't fair, but also recognize and enforce in them the reality that their choices matter. But Mama was able to strike that balance. The other thing that really helped was the United States Marine Corps. So we think of the Marine Corps as a military outfit, and of course it is. But for me, the US Marine Corps was a 4-year crash course in character education. Taught me how to
Oh, but remember, Agniveer is going to destroy the Indian military, okay? Indian Army.
make a bed, how to do laundry, how to wake up early, how to manage my finances. These are things my community didn't teach me. Remember when I went to go buy a car for the very first time, I was offered a dealer's low interest rate of 21.9%. I was ready to sign on the dotted line. But I didn't take that deal because I went and took it to my officer who told me, stop being an idiot, go to the local credit union and get a better deal. And so that's what I did. But without the Marine Corps, I would have never had access to that knowledge. I would have had a financial calamity, frankly. Last thing.
Yeah, this I'm going getting reminded of Agniveer scheme, of course. But now the Agniveer will destroy the Indian army is the equivalent of the commie argument of, because most right wingers also say this, that Agniveer is going to destroy the Indian army without, of course, knowing the details of Agniveer or the Indian army. So if some retired army general has said that, they might have their own arguments, but most people who don't know either of these two things in detail, they are also going on parroting these lines in a way to either, let's say, come across as the cool, edgy, further right of BJP guy, or just standard anti-establishment fun things that young people like to do, or because they just want to come across as the guy who, let's say, parrots the lines of army generals even. Oh my God. So this is the commie equivalent of rising income inequality. It's going on rising and rising everywhere.
The thing I want to say is that I had a lot of good fortune in the mentors and people who have played an important role in my life, from the Marines, from Ohio State, from Yale, from other places, people have really stepped in and ensured that they filled that social capital gap that it was pretty obvious, apparently, that I had. That comes from good fortune. But a lot of children aren't going to have that good fortune. And I think that raises really important questions for all of us about how we're going to change that. We need to ask questions about how we're going to give low-income kids who come from a broken home access to a loving home. We need to ask questions about how we're going to teach low-income parents how to better interact with their children, with their partners. We need to ask questions about how we give social capital mentorship to low-income kids who don't have it. We need to think about how we teach working-class children about not just hard skills like reading, mathematics, but also soft skills like conflict resolution and financial management. Now, I don't have...
They don't even have casteism in theory. They don't even have caste-based reservation. And even this guy has better solutions for casteism of India.
अच्छा एक चीज this guy अच्छा याद आएगा तो I'll tell you. Anyway, let's move on.
Okay, I just wanted to respond to Abhirat Jana's comment here. He's asking that a very weird question. Why does suicide feel rational and irrational both at the same time? Why is it so hard to differentiate between two choices? First of all, if you are feeling suicidal right now, you need to contact someone, a friend or a relative or a therapist even, okay? Because if you're on the verge of suicide, you can't do things like I'll do 5 push-ups and feel better, okay? If you are on the verge of suicide, consider staying alive and contact somebody, okay? But if on the long run, if you're feeling generally depressed about life, that you have contemplated suicide in the last 1 year at least, then I would say that no matter what, at least get a 6-pack, okay? However possible. I know the first response is that because of depression you can't work out, but work out no matter what and then see if you feel depressed or not, okay?
All of the answers. I don't know all of the solutions to this problem, but I do know this. In Southern Ohio right now, there's a kid who's anxiously awaiting their dad, wondering whether when he comes through the door, he'll walk calmly or stumble drunkenly. There's a kid whose mom sticks a needle in her arm and passes out, and he doesn't know why she doesn't cook him dinner, and he goes to bed hungry that night. There's a kid who has no hope for the future, but desperately wants to live a better life. They just want somebody to show it to them. I don't have all the answers, but I know that unless our society starts asking better questions about why I was so lucky and about how to give that luck to more of our communities and our country's children, we're going to continue to have a very significant problem. Thank you.
You can't. In the end, you can't. You will just come up with a different hillbilly reservation.
Acha, the point I was going to say, what he's talking about social capital is actually what Robert Putnam talks about.
Okay.
So a few books I would appreciate if you showed it on your on the screen.
Okay.
First is I think Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam, but I don't subscribe to Robert Putnam's ideas. Although it can be a useful book to understand what J.D. Vance was talking about. Do Robert Putnam, I think Bowling Alone or something like that. Yeah. So he's also a sociologist, but his concept of social capital is kind of like a more positive, kind of like a value-based social capital. I am not, since I see myself more as a descriptive sociology person than a prescriptive one, I stick to more Pierre Bourdieu's argument of what social capital, what he's talking about in Pierre Bourdieu's language is cultural capital. Now Pierre Bourdieu it can have a negative connotation as well. So stealing, being a pickpocket is also a kind of cultural capital. Okay. But of course, in different contexts, what Bourdieu says, in different fields, different kinds of cultural capital has different value. Like, for example, being able to repair a car can be very useful in certain contexts, but useless in other contexts. Same, being able to talk in English may be very useful in a job at an MNC or something, but it will be very useless if you go to a rural part of India and start talking to
and your bike breaks down and you can't speak Hindi, then you are fucked.
Yes. So it does. So what Bourdieu's thing is, it allows you to understand a whole range of manner in which cultural capital and social capital and symbolic capital work. We will discuss Bourdieu later in another day. On another day, let's slowly start wrapping it up, but I would like you to maybe show on screen a book by Synott.
What's the spelling?
Synnott, I think. Half Open Door.
What's Synott?
No, not Nicholas Synott. Not Nicholas Synott.
Okay.
It's a woman. Half Opened Door. The first one, the first picture on the left. Yeah, this one. This is a brilliant book for you to understand how the caste thing works in the American context. Okay. Ye jo the thing that she studies is how these universities, which are actually supposed to, so this is an extension of what Pierre Bourdieu is arguing actually. The elite schools how it reproduces actually inequalities. And this will explain why J.D. Vance had such problems in Yale. Okay. But again, his case proves that this is not always going to be the case. You can work hard and gain enough cultural capital to do well. Okay. But wahi hai ki you have to understand that the elite universities of the US very much reproduce the caste structure in American society.
Yeah, and they have reservations for alumnus, children of alumnus.
Yeah, wo to hai hi. And that enables many of these already prosperous and aristocratic people to continue going like the Winklevoss twins, to go on into the, or Harvard ko to, see, Zuckerberg was also a student of Harvard, but he wasn't allowed into the final clubs, right? So the final clubs could only be accessed by the WASP elites, or somebody like Eduardo Saverin, who is very successful suddenly. Okay. So as a, like, Eduardo Saverin was a exception, like J.D. Vance in that context, or Eduardo Saverin.
Or who was the black head of the army when George Bush bombed Iraq. So like people like children of such black people will of course have those same privileges in Harvard.
Mane abhi especially after the whole race thing came in after the 60s, they would probably have more black people, more Indians, more Chinese people and all that. But usme bhi the people, the Indians and Chinese and black people who attend Harvard clearly are the elites of their own communities, right? So that's the whole other aspect of caste. Ki caste bhi hai, but dekho, that is the whole thing. So somebody said Usha understood his struggles. Actually, Usha Vance did not understand his struggles. You're getting one thing wrong. She was more elite than him. She was an Indian, but her parents did better than his parents. So she knew table manners better than he did. Despite
and she mentioned this while she was introducing him in the RNC only, that my life was so much better. I had two parents in the household. I was studying, getting educated and stuff. And Usha Vance is pretty much a prodigy. Okay, she's basically the woman version of Vivek in terms of how educated she is. She has a graduation and fucking postdoc in history, but she also has a master's in law, and she's a law practitioner only by profession.
Precisely. But you unnecessarily make simple things sound extremely complex while explaining. Just this is the exact opposite of what I'm trying to do.
No. If he makes it simpler than this, then it's going to be basically misinterpretation.
And no, more importantly, I want you people to learn the
lexicon as
well of social sciences. The social sciences are not just empty words. Sometimes they do have value. But to access them, you must know a lot of the terminologies and the stuff that we talk about. And only then can you debate with a trained commie, right? If you know their terms better than them, then you can use that thing on them. That's our whole, the mission that I think both of us have.
Yes, so anyway, if he goes on boiling down, yes, we can do a one PowerPoint presentation and explain casteism for here and forever and after, okay? But you are not going to be able to use that material in a debate or even understand it in your mind properly, because just knowing Mr. Sociologist's opinion on this is not the factor. It's how you get to such conclusions and how you think. That is the more important part. So yes, you will just go around quoting some anonymous sociologist in debates, right? But what about your own education? That's going to
Precisely.
remain incomplete if you learn it that way. Okay, then, Professor Christoph Liselott, thank you for joining
Thank
us.
you. Yeah. Good night, all of
Okay.
you.
Yeah. Good night. Bye bye, guys. Thank you for joining us.
श्रवरूढं महाभीमं गुणाद्रष्टाम्बरप्रदम् अस्य युक्तं त्रिनेत्रं च कपालकर्णिकाकरां मुक्तकेशीं ललज्जयः पिबन्तीं रुधिरं चतुर्बाहु समायुक्तं वराभयकरं स्मरेत् चतुर्बाहु समायुक्तं वराभयकरं स्मरेत् काली काली महाकाली कालिके पापहारिणी धर्मर्थ मोक्ष देवी